little change of location, so we are in the garden today. Going to be doing some open fire cooking, so we have our grill all set and ready to go. Going to be doing some lobster, ribeye, and some street corn. But before we get started into that, I want to introduce to you our wine educator who is going to be joining in, helping guide us along as we go along today. Juan?
Hello everyone, welcome back to our weekly cooking class. My name is Juan, like my friend just said. Been working at the tasting room for 5 years. And first of all, we just want to share with you guys the fact that today is International Workers Day. So we just want to show our appreciation to the frontline workers. We hope that you and your families are safe and healthy. We can't wait for you guys to be able to go back home and spend some time with you guys. So cheers to that. Cheers, my friend Kemp. We have a little bit of Rosato di Nebbiolo. We wish you guys can be tasting this with us, but if you have some at home, you can go ahead and take the time to open up your bottles, get yourself, settle down, and we'll begin the show in just a little bit.
All right. Pop this. Let's get some air going on our grill. Any big plans this weekend, Juan?
Just staying at home, man. Yeah. So I think I have some virtual tastings coming up.
Yeah.
So we are doing some virtual tastings. If you guys want to join us, you can send us an email, give us a phone call, call the winery. We send you the wine to your house. If you have some friends that want to partake in the virtual tastings, we usually send the same packages to the different locations. You guys pick a day and a time for us to join a Zoom video call, and then we taste the wines with you guys. So I just finished one upstairs actually, and it went pretty well, I think. So what about you?
For me, I have a big plans of going probably from the bedroom with my 11-month-old to a living room, and then probably go outside and then back inside, and that's pretty much about it.
Yeah, no, totally. So
pretty much been life outside of work, so
yeah. So
I look forward to being able to do things like this, get a little change of pace. So
yeah.
All right.
So just to add a little bit more to what Cameron was saying, we are on the East Arbor in the gardens. So some of you guys have visited Round Pond before. Most of the time when you join one of our lunch or brunch experiences, we take you through the garden so you can see the produce and everything where it's coming from. So right now we're on the East Arbor. We do have some furniture set up here always. So if you have groups of 20 people or more, you can contact our events people here, and then you can bring your corporate, people down here. We do lunches, we do dinners, we do rehearsal dinners. We've had people get engaged in the garden itself. So a lot of activity going on back here. Just let us know in advance, and we can most definitely make it happen for you guys.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started now that our grill's all set to go. So again, we're gonna be doing some outside open fire cooking. It's one of my favorite cooking to do at home. If I could grill everything, I prefer to do that. Hopefully you don't hear too much of our roosters behind us in the background. So first thing we're gonna get started with is our lobster tails. So hopefully if everyone's cooking along with us, you got a chance to download the instructions and a recipe if you got a chance to pick one up. So our lobster tail, this one is a spiny lobster, so they typically have a little bit of a larger tail. The claws themselves are pretty much non-existent. It's a little bit different from the main lobsters that you typically see with the large claws and the meat. So for this one, we just have our tail. So it's a fresh lobster. It's been de-thawed there, and we just took our scissors, or you can take a knife, and you just want to cut straight down the middle there, just up to the edge of the tail. And then as you can see, it splits open. You want to leave that intact, and that just allows it to basically fillet open as you're grilling on the meat. So for that, just want to take a simple olive oil. We're going to use a little bit of our Italian. So typically these are our finishing oils for the flavor. So we just want to put just a little bit on there so that the salt and pepper that we're going to add sticks to it. Just a little salt, you can sprinkle. A little bit of pepper there. And then while that's sitting, onion salsa verde. So we have our spring onions that we got fresh from the garden. If you've had a chance to try these, they have a little bit more of a pungent flavor than a regular onion. I like onion flavor, so I like a lot of them inside of there. Myself, I don't know about one there.
Yeah, I'll take a little onion, why not? Yeah, for sure.
All right, so let's go ahead. We're gonna season this with just a little bit of our Italian oil too. And this is just to get a char on our grill there. You just want to coat it onions just to get that flavor. I'm gonna place that on our grill. Sprinkle a little salt and pepper on that too. And while that is getting our little char on there, we can start to mix the rest of our salsa verde, which is gonna go on top of our lobster once we're done there. So we have our Italian olive oil. We're gonna have some parsley that we pre-chopped pretty fine earlier. Just that side there. Got to combat with the flies out here today. So a little bit of parsley. Start this with the olive oil.
Using the Italian olive oil?
Using our Italian olive oil, yeah.
Cool, awesome.
Just a little bit in there. And we can let that sit. As you see.
We have a question about what mountains are behind you, Chef.
So those are actually going to be the Vaca mountain range. So we have Vaca mountain range right over here. There's also Proprietary Hill. It's a really beautiful sight to see. We are actually running between those two guys, and then on the opposite side we have the Mayacamas mountain range. Story goes, the millions of years ago they were all active volcanoes, so a lot of different soil types, a lot of different microclimates are now set down here. That's actually one of the reasons why we can grow a Nebbiolo. So today we're going to be tasting the lobster with the Rosato di Nebbiolo. So it is just a rosé made out of Nebbiolo grape, which again, Nebbiolo is a pretty unique varietal for you to find in the Napa Valley. It is essentially a pretty big Italian grape, mainly found in Piedmont, Italy. So we are very lucky to be able to again have these different microclimates, different soil types, because we can grow Nebbiolo, we can grow Sangiovese. Everybody is known here for Cabernet Sauvignon, so when you come and you visit us, you're gonna find some unique wines that you can actually pair with multiple different things. And again, we always try to set ourselves apart from everybody else. The rosé that we make here is actually made in the same process as we do our red wines. Most of the rosés in the Napa Valley are being made in the Saunier way, which is just bleeding up the wine from red into a pink one, the rosé. So sometimes people have a negative perception on rosés because of that reason. Our rosé, we have a small pocket of Nebbiolo right next to the Napa Valley River. We harvest it, we take it through the same process as the reds. Instead of soaking with the skins for 2-3 weeks, we soak it with the skins for 4 or 5 hours, and that's actually how we get to manage the peachy pink, you know, salmon-y color. So this one is really, really tasty. We haven't released it yet to the general public. Club members have acquired it, or if you actually got the kit for this cooking class, then you're probably enjoying it at home. But May 4th, we're gonna release it to everybody. Very small case production, only about 400. So if you have tasted it before and you wanna get your hands on it, you gotta make sure you jump on it as soon as you can. Call us, email us, we're here to help you out.
Is it 100% Nebbiolo?
It is 100% Nebbiolo. Again, most of the time people are making it out of Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir is usually the usual suspect for rosés, or sometimes Malbec. Again, we have the Nebbiolo. Not a lot of people grow it, so we gotta make sure that we use those rare varietals to our advantage.
And Chef, what kind of salt are you using?
So this is just a regular kosher salt and pepper. So just a standard that you can find. If you have any other kind of salt, you can use that as well too. It's just a preference.
We have some shout outs from Maria Cruz, who says, oh my gosh, you guys look great. She misses the garden. She can't wait to come back. Nikki, which is in Texas, she works with us.
Nice.
Also says, hi, you guys look great. Let's see, Lisa Pearl. How do I get the recipes? Lisa, they're on our website.
Yes, all of the recipes are on the website. I believe they sent out an email blast as well that had everything tied to a PDF that you can download and get the recipes on there. So I'm sure they'll post them again on the social media as well.
Yeah, and if you go on our website, you can actually find it on there, the kits, virtual kits, if I'm not mistaken.
The events page.
And the events page as well. So if you go on there and you, when I can't find it, I usually go on the little search, little tab. I type in virtual tasting and it'll take me right to here. And we are also doing some Mother's Day kits for the brunch. That's going to happen next Friday, if I'm not mistaken. So if you want to get ahead, go jump on it right after this is over and get your stuff together for that.
All right, so let's get going. So we've pulled our spring onion off the grill. As you can see, it just has a nice little char. That's all we want. Takes about 1-2 minutes to cook. We're just going to give that a quick little chop, and that's going to get added into our salsa verde.
Brandon from the Note Tree says hi, Cam.
Brandon, hello. So work at my old restaurant in Napa with me. So there we go. We're going to put that off to the side. I'll show you what we can do with the rest of that spring onion later. So we're just going to take that, add that in there too. parsley. The olive oil just gives that a nice little blend. If you need to add a little bit more olive oil, you can, depending on how much produce and vegetables you have inside there. Just want it just to coat it enough to be able to get a spoonful. And then we are ready to put our lobster on the grill. So how I like to cook mine, there's a bunch of different ways, I guess, that you can do it. Sometimes some people can boil it first, and then you just spend a little bit of time on the grill. I like to have mine raw because that way it gives me time to add a lot more butter. You get a lot more of that smoky and charcoal taste onto. So I prefer to start with mine fleshed down just to get that char on that flesh there, and you can set it right on that hot part. And you want to let that probably cook 2-3 minutes or so. As that's cooking, we're going to start to melt our butter with our cast iron just straight over the grill with it. You can tell I like a lot of butter on things.
Do we get to eat this at the end, Chef?
We do get to eat this at the end. That's the great part of all this. So,
good.
So with lobster, right now everything we're doing is on high heat. Sometimes pull this over just to the hot spot there, you can see. You just want to cook the lobster till it basically gets opaque or it's not that see-through translucent color anymore. So we just go on the flesh side again just to get that char on the outside. We're gonna flip it and then we'll cook the rest, the skin side down there.
So Jamie's asking, is charcoal best or would propane work?
You can do propane. If you have wood, you can use that as well. It's really just a preference of cooking. I've done it on both. I prefer open fire with the charcoal. It's a little bit more easier for myself to maintain.
Gene Edwards Sellers says that you're making me hungry, Cam.
Hopefully, I'm getting hungry. I haven't ate either. So
Well, what grapes are behind us?
So that is actually going to be Cabernet Sauvignon. Yeah, so we started our bud break maybe 5-6 weeks ago with these little heat spikes that we had been seeing. You can't really get too close right now, but we have little baby grapes already growing. So every year, Mother Nature will throw some curveballs at us. So we just got to go into the vineyards, pick from the better blocks, and try to create the best wine that year. So kind of unique.
All right, so as our butter starts to melt, we're just gonna add a little bit of diced garlic into there. Just let that cook and mix all together. It's just about that time to flip our lobster over. And again, you can see we have just a little bit of char on there. Gonna add some salt into that, our butter, some more pepper.
Cam, your brother says hi.
Tell them hello. Get that mixed together, and then as that begins to melt, just baste that straight over the top of your lobster. And again, we're just cooking this till it turns opaque. You don't want to overcook lobster because then it becomes a little bit more chewy. Nobody likes chewy lobster. If you start to get a little bit of fire like that underneath, just want to cut the oxygen off to that. That's a good thing with open fire. It's kind of an on and off switch. So you kind of close the top, you cut the oxygen down, and it gives it time to, as that heat goes inside, it's going to coat over the top of that lobster as well, kind of coat that butter onto there. There we go. Excuse all the smoke coming up. And again, we just keep coating some more. Keep that closed, and then depending again on preference, some people prefer a lot more char on their lobster, so you can always flip it back over. You can cook it longer on the flesh side too. You tend to probably kind of overcook that top layer, but if it's done right, again, you can still have a nice chewy and tender lobster in there. So that's going to be almost done. It's probably been roughly about 5 minutes or so here. Get that clear to plate up.
How's the weather there today? Here today.
It's about 79 degrees, so it's actually pretty nice.
Yeah, it's perfect.
And we have a compliment on your shirt, Juan.
Oh, really? Thank you. You know, it's Friday, so aloha Friday to everybody. And it's nice. I think it was maybe 2-3 days ago. It was 89 degrees. It was pretty warm. So it's kind of unusual to see it during this time of the year. So today is just perfect to be back here grilling with my friend Cam. We usually don't do this very often. So this is just a special treat. We did see a hawk flying by with a snake. So it is a working farm. So piggybacking on Cam's comment about the rooster earlier, it is a working farm. So there's a lot of animals over here. It's not uncommon for us to see some coyotes running around the property. So you just appreciate being in such a beautiful place and enjoying time with nice people. So.
All right, so our lobster is just about done there. Gonna give it one more little coat there of our butter.
Chris Hogan said that you guys should do a cookbook and with suggested wine pairings for the winery.
Close that with one more cookbook. So we have a lot of our recipes they have posted online and everything too. So that's one place where we have everything kind of collected into a little grouping, I guess, that you can get from pretty much all the chefs that have been here since they've started almost. So.
And we also have some little recipe cards. So if you ever want to, make something like this happen back at home, when you make an order for wine or anything else, you let us know in advance. I would like to get some of those recipe cards. We'll go ahead and put them in the shipment with your wine, send it to you, and then you can give it a go at home too.
All right, so excuse the smoke. We'll go ahead and pull our lobster tail off there. Gotcha. Take this off with the butter. So again, I'm a fan of butter. Give it one last little coat at the very end. And then we just top it with our salsa verde, our charred spring onions that we've used. Just layer that right over the top there. And that is our grilled lobster and spring onion salsa verde. Something simple, easy, quick little dish you can get done cooked in about 10 to 15 minutes on the grill.
And so so that's gonna pair really great with the rosé. Rosé can pair really nicely with any type of seafood, really. Salmon, raw seafood, slightly grilled seafood, lighter pastas too. Or if it's again 85 degrees plus and you're sitting on your porch, you have some good company in front of you, you just pop open that bottle and you enjoy it. Really refreshing.
We have a Miles McDonald saying that he's a fan of butter too.
Who's that?
I'll keep that in mind once we're back open.
Jamie asked, where's the rest of the lobster?
Where's the rest? I had to snack on that just to make sure it's just right. Do a little quality check for everybody
Quality
first. So. All right, so the next thing we're gonna get into is our, what I guess we can call our round pond street corn. So me and Juan were talking the other day, so I'm a big fan of corn. I'm a big fan of elotes, which is a grilled street corn. Typically you have the mayo, the cotija, the chili, if I'm correct on there. Yeah. A little squirt of lime juice, so you have the citrus inside there with the sweet. So for us today, we're gonna kind of do a little, I guess you can call our Italian round pond version of it. So we're gonna use a little bit of our Meyer lemon oil just to get that flavor on there. Switch the cheese up a little bit to Parmesan cheese as well. Still get those same flavors from the sweet corn, but just instead of a lime, you get lemon on there. But I prefer to grill these just to get that char underneath everything with the cheese and everything else. It just gives a nice buttery sweet flavor. And that we are pairing today with
the proprietary white wine. So this is going to be the second or a part of our second tier of white wines that we have. We only make 3 of them actually. So proprietary means for us it's only available here at the winery. You either have to be a club member or you have to physically come visit us or send us an email, give us a phone call. It'll be a blend between Sauvignon Blanc, Viognier, and Semillon, which are the only 3 white grapes that we grow on the property. We do ferment it in stainless steel tanks, and then we age it in French oak barrels for about 3 to 4 months. So the stainless steel fermentation is going to give it a crispy clean finish in the back of the palate. The oak aging is going to give it a little bit of a velvety, silky, really elegant entry, and you can pair it with all sorts of things as well.
And Cam, do you prefer to cook the corn in the husk or shucked?
So typically if I have the free time, I prefer it in the husk. So you can throw that straight on the grill. The reason I prefer that, it prevents kind of a foolproof from actually burning the corn almost. So you can burn all the husk around it if you leave it on a hot spot on the grill or so. And then you just kind of peel the husk back, and it basically steams the corn on the inside. After that, you can throw it back on the grill to get a char. Just for timing purposes today, we kind of boiled it and a little bit of water, salt, butter, just to add that flavor back into it. But I prefer straight on the grill. So we'll go ahead and get started. So again, we have these boiled. So I've shown you kind of two ways that you can do this. One way is, again, a simple skewer. You want to soak those first before you put them on the grill, just to help prevent them from burning on there. And then this way, we kept the husk directly on the corn, and all we did was peel it back, and then you basically just tie a knot. And what that does is once you grill it, it kind of gives you a handle in case you don't have a skewer at home. So it's just a foolproof way there too. So we're gonna go ahead and get these, since they're already part cooked, we're just getting that char on there, and then we're gonna build the street corn with all the ingredients on top. So we have our Meyer lemon. Just gonna rub that over just a little bit. Again, that's just for the flavor. And again, the oil helps also get that char. With the fire, you don't want to have too much because that will spark up and light the fire up. Again, since these are cooked, you just want it just hot, just enough to get a little quick char on there.
Dolores is asking if you soak the corn before you grill it.
So I don't soak it, since technically you're cooking it in the water anyway. I just go straight into the boiling water for the 10 or 15 minutes or so. I try not to do that too far ahead of time, because then the corn will start to kind of shrivel. If you ever leave corn out for too much, you can kind of see it looks like your hand soaked in water for too long almost. Nobody wants corn.
Nobody wants that.
And do you remove the hair from under the husk?
Yes, you want to take all the hair out, so that's the part that you don't want to eat. Was that one or something?
Yeah, so the street corn pretty popular in my culture. Obviously, we usually do mayo. We also do sour cream sometimes. Just depends on your personal preference. But definitely very popular. So I've never even thought of the idea to pair a white wine or proprietary white wine with something like this. So I'm actually pretty excited to see how that turns out. And you guys are not gonna see the damage that we're gonna be doing on camera, but I will get back online and let you guys know how that went.
These classes are pretty fun because it gives us the opportunity to kind of take the things that we like to cook for fun at home all the time and kind of play around with those ideas and how we can either change a few things to kind of pair those and play with the wine. So that's just one of the fun parts of being the chef here at the winery.
And we actually grow the corn here on the property too, right, Cam?
Yeah, so these today didn't come. We actually just planted corn. I was talking with them. So the corn, I believe, just went in. So we'll probably 2-3 months out from that still. Like it'll probably come in June maybe.
Okay.
But yeah, we do grow corn on property. We have that. I wish you guys could see our garden. There's pretty much at that time where everything is starting to grow back out now. We're gonna get, I think now that we got our peppers coming in, potatoes are gonna be coming in. So
Nice.
got some good things to look forward to for the summer coming up.
One question about what's growing in between the vines.
It's a really good question, actually.
Flowers again?
So no, not the mustards yet, but we do sometimes use some cover crop, just to bring back nutrients into the soils. Most of the time we use some mustards because they look pretty. They attract some positive insects, some ladybugs, to bring back positive bacteria into the soils. Sometimes when we take old vines out of the acreage, we will plant some fava beans, some cherry tomatoes to bring back nitrogen into the soil as well. Most of the time we leave it bare for about 2 years so that it can get back to healthy. And the fact that we have 470 acres, we're actually pretty lucky and pretty blessed to be able to allow it to get back to to being healthy versus just planting something right back into the field, I guess you could say.
Chef, do you prefer white or yellow corn?
It's just a preference. Myself, I like the yellow corn. It's more just the color. If I'm doing like purees and things like that, sometimes I use the sweet corn or the white corn. So we're just still trying to get that little char on here. The heat kind of died down a tiny bit. But all you want to do is start turning these, probably get like 1 to 2 minutes per side or so. Just keep giving those a nice little turn.
Is the prop white oaky?
So even though we do age it for 3-4 months in French oak barrels, it is actually not that oaky. I think the Viognier really comes forward a little bit more with the peach notes, the nectarine, a little bit of pineapple. So something that when you go to actually smell it, it'll smell sweet, but then you go to taste it, it's actually on the drier side. So it actually complements each other really well. And of course, when you get the right food into the equation, it takes it to the next level. So I wouldn't say that it was oaky. It's a little more refreshing, more light, more crispy than that.
And Juan, how long have you worked at Round Pond?
I've been here for almost 5 years actually. So July it'll be 5 years, and I've known the family for almost 7 years now actually. So I met Ryan, who is the daughter of the family here, and she brought me to work over here. 5 years later, clearly I enjoy living here, and I enjoy drinking good wine and looking at a beautiful property on a daily basis. So pretty sweet.
Exactly.
Are those on direct or indirect heat?
So these I'm doing on direct heat. Typically when you grill, you want to have kind of the coals pushed to one side. So that way you can do your indirect and direct heat. If things get hot, you can kind of push it to the cold side. For what we're doing today, everything's going to be on high heat. That's why I just kind of filled it up on here. Because again, majority of these we are just cooking just to get that char. You don't want to fire, but you want that all the coals pretty white in that heat emanating up. So.
And a very important question from El Shap. Do you eat the corn across or go around?
I just eat it.
That's a good question.
I don't
though.
even think I think about it.
Yeah, no, I personally I would probably go across and then start turning, but the idea is just to get that thing in your tummy. So, however you like them, just do it.
Cam, Lisa is asking if you can use a grill pan for the corn.
Yeah. So you can technically do this even if you don't have a grill outside. If you just have, a cast iron inside the house, you're really just trying to get that char on the corn. You don't necessarily have to grill them. If you wanted to cook them all the way inside or boil them, you can do it that way as well, and then the process is still the same after. So once you're starting to get a little bit of char on these, I'm going to pull one of these out. Get the rest of these off. So we'll show you kind of what we do for the street corn. So we have, again, you can take mayonnaise. Where did our bowl go to? So we got spill. So I have a little bit of aioli, just an in-house mayonnaise that we made. So we just want to coat that on our corn. And this is so everything sticks to it.
What are the sticks in the corn?
It's just a skewer, a bamboo skewer. So once I boil them, that's another thing too. It makes it a little bit easier to pop the skewer in once it kind of been a little bit warmer. Sometimes you gotta kind of beat it down in there. Again, we have our cheese. We use a mixture of Parmesan and some Pecorino just for the saltiness. Again, you can use cotija. The main thing is just to make sure that it's a fine grate cheese, so that way you want it sticking to the corn. Yep, the grated cheese doesn't stick quite as much. Then we have some chives that we got from our garden. Get those nice and mixed on there.
Could you use oil instead of mayo if you're dairy free?
You could use oil. So. All that sticking. And then we have a mixture of I prefer a mixture of chili and paprika. Again, it's a preference. Some people like extra hot. You can use cayenne on there. If you're pairing it with wine, probably don't want to have too much spice on there. That can take away from it. And just sprinkle that all over. And why I prefer it in the bowl or a pan, you want to be able to catch all the ingredients that you're dropping down there. Mix it all up. And you have your street corn.
Nice, dude.
We will save that for later.
Yep.
I'm going to pop these other ones out.
Is the Sauvignon Blanc used in
Let you guys
the
see
one
that.
that's used in the proprietary white blend the same as the one in the Rutherford Sauvignon Blanc?
So we have different pockets, different blocks on the property. And depending on what we're doing, well, the winemaker has the final decision. Like I said before, Mother Nature can throw a lot of curveballs at you, so you just gotta pick whatever is best that year and allocate it to different wine bottles. So it is not the same every year; it's different every single year. So it just depends on what the winemaker wants to do and how the grapes are developing for that year. But no, to answer your question, it's not the same.
Alrighty, so now we are to one of the favorite things I like to cook, which is, so I prefer good when you're grilling. It gives it that nice little flavor. It drips down and you get that char popping up from there. You could use any steak necessarily, that's your preference at home. I just prefer these for the flavor of the fat and everything on the meat there. So with the ribeyes, you don't want to do too much to them. When it comes to grilling, we're going to keep it pretty simple here. We just have a little bit of olive oil. We're just going to put on there pepper coats onto it.
You using the garlic olive oil?
Just garlic, yeah, for just a little bit.
Just personal preference on that one? Or?
Typically you don't want to cook with those, but just for the flavor, it adds a little bit more to it there. Have our salt and pepper. And with the red meat, you can kind of liberally season those. Probably can't get too much on there. You want to make sure everything gets pressed in there. They're a thick piece of meat. With these, you don't want them too thin because then they'll cook extremely quick.
We don't do this on a regular basis for the lunch, right? Or anything,
depends. So typically we change these from time to time. Our lunches we've done. Lunches. And the wines and those kind of things. So I'm gonna swap my gloves here real quick.
Guy from down. Wait to see all our guests and families.
I know, so looking forward to everybody being able to join us back and get back to hosting everybody for bronzos and punches is what I miss the most. So.
Yeah. It is nice to see some of our guests, through Zoom, FaceTime. I know a lot of my club members have been reaching out, they just want to hang out with you. Most of the time they have the wines at home already, so they just want to have that connection, break up their routine for the day and just, talk to somebody. So I know I Zoom call with a club member in Texas, and we're just talking back and forth about life, about how nice it is to have friends and to pretty much be healthy and be able to just enjoy a glass of wine together. So we can't wait to have you guys back here, hopefully soon. But for now, just stay safe out there and stay healthy.
Looking forward to it.
Renee from Oklahoma says thanks for sharing with us. She can't wait to come back and see her sisters this fall and visit.
Cool. We can't wait to see you, Renee.
Alright, so we are going to get our ribeye on the grill. This right here is probably about an inch or so thick. Typically those take about 3 to 4 minutes per side on there. Depending on your cook, I prefer mine medium rare. It's just preference. If you like it a little bit more, you can leave it on the grill a little bit longer. So this we're going to place directly on the heat. Some ribeyes you'll see they'll have a lot of fat around the edges. If you have that, depending on, you might want to start cooking that directly on the fat. I've trimmed a lot of the ones on the edges out, so we're just going to go directly on the cut side, straight on the high heat. And we're just going to leave that sitting there.
Would the gravel wines work with the ribeye?
The gravel wines you can't. I mean, typically the rule is what red wine, meat, gravel just for, I would say, what goes into those wines, the complexity of them. I prefer just to drink those separately, just for that flavor. But you can pair with that as well, depending on which gravel that you have.
Yeah, so the gravel series, I mean, they're my personal favorite wines that we make there at the property. Like Cameron said, they're a meal within themselves. But I think the Secret Garden personally, or maybe the Vow, would be the best to pair with this. They're a little bit more full body, a little bit more tannic, more acidic, so definitely that's going to soften with time. But if you can't wait 10, 15 more years, you grab yourself a piece of ribeye and you make it happen. So I think Secret Garden or the Vow. Scottish Gate tends to be a little bit more floral, a little bit more rose petal, more chocolate, more vanilla bean. That one you can just sip all by itself. Yeah. So.
Nick is asking, what is your favorite Round Pond wine to drink?
For myself, I like the Super Tuscan.
Tuscan.
Yeah, it's just the flavors. You can kind of go whichever way with that. If you want to go Italian food with it, if you want to kind of play around and do some sort of vegetables and play around with the seasonings to bring out the spice inside that wine too.
It actually goes great with grilled food too, right?
Exactly,
Super Tuscan. So I know that you like grilling, so I'm sure that plays a part into it. My personal favorite is probably the Vow 2015, or maybe the Secret Garden 2016. Obviously, we're lucky to work such a beautiful property that we get to taste them every so often, and I think those two really stand out for me. I like the Reserve Cabernet Sauvignon 2016, which is 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. I personally think it's a little brother to the Gravel Series wines. Price point wise, I think it's a really killer bang for the buck. So they're all good though.
Definitely.
Cap on the ribeye?
Huh?
Cap on for the ribeye?
Cap on. It's again a preference on that. For what we're doing here and just with the wind and everything, I'm trying to get the fire to come back up, so I have the cap off. That way the wind kind of gets that blaze kind of going. We get that char on the skin. Depending on, again, your grill, if it's too hot, you can always have that cap over and do it that way as well. For me, I always just go by the touch of it to see if it's done or not. What someone kind of give you as like a gauge is if you take your thumb and you kind of touch that fatty part that's just underneath there, without touching any fingers, that's equivalent of what a rare piece of meat should feel like. And then as you go down, you have your medium rare, touching the index, middle finger is a medium well, and then if you get to your pinky, you can see it's a lot more tougher. That's well done. So the more you cook a meat, you kind of get used to, as it's cooking, you can touch it and kind of feel if it's done or not. You can also use a thermometer if you have it. That's kind of the easy way. Just gonna give this a little turn there, put it back over the fire.
City, Texas, say hi and say they love the wine tasting back in September that they had with you, and they're loving the cooking classes from you guys.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Hello to Janet and Bob. We can't wait to have you back. We have a live chat going on where one of the tasting room employees will actually be on the computer. So most of the time when I'm working the live chat, people will ask me, what's your name? I tell them Juan, and they say, you hosted me last year, etc. So we have a connection that way. But yeah, you just go online and then you give us again a date and a time, and we can set that up for you. All you need is to choose your wines. We ship them to you, and then we get on a video call rather easily.
So one thing we prepare to go with our ribeye as us cooking is our compound, basically just butter mixed with any other type of ingredient to enhance the flavor. So in this case, we had some parsley and some rosemary from our garden that we mix inside there. So you just get the butter nice and soft. You chop up the herbs, you toss that inside there. You wrap that back up in plastic wrap and put that back in the fridge at least about an hour for it to cool down and to solidify back up together. So that's what we have here. We've just cut a few of those off. I prefer them a little bit more room temp. They get pretty soft since it's already been kind of churned as you're mixing up the parsley and the herbs inside there. But when you're grilling, as you pull that hot meat off the grill, if it's already at room temp, you can drop that compound and butter directly on top, and that's going to melt and give all that flavor that you put inside there directly over the steak. We're going to go ahead and give this one a little turn here. As you can see, we have a little bit of crust just built up there from. We're just going to give that another 2-3 minutes or so on the other side.
Andrea Nelson is asking, what would you pair with Syrah? She says Syrah takes a backseat to Cab often in the Napa Valley, but she does love Syrah and wants to know what you would pair with that food-wise.
So I just tasted our Syrah not too long ago with a club member. Actually, they wanted to do a virtual tasting with a Syrah that they had found in their cellar, and to me, it was actually a lot lighter than I anticipated. I remember when I first started working here, I used to drink, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, some lighter wines. The Syrah that I tasted here was so big, slap you across the face type of red wine that it made me go to the dark side and switch over to Cabernet Sauvignon. So with that being said, I tried that Syrah not too long ago. I thought it was going to be something similar to what I had that I remembered, and it was completely different. It was a little more cherry, a little more strawberry, a little bit more floral, more rose petals. So it was actually closer to a Pinot Noir. So I don't know, anything on the lighter side?
For Pinot, when it comes to meat, I mean, it's, again, for me, when I'm doing meat, I like to base off the wine I'm drinking first, and then from there you can kind of play around with everything, even if it's sometimes a meat that may not necessarily pair with it. For instance, if you have seafood that you wanted to pair, you could add some spices onto that, and that may actually pair pretty good with the Syrah too, because it can bring out, you get the sweetness sometimes from the seafood, but then all the peppery notes as well from I'm kind of at a back end, so.
Chef Maureen was pretty excited about the thumb gauge that you just described. She said that it was a great tip.
I say use at your own risk. It's still best to, a thermometer always helps, and then just as the more you do it, the more you kind of get used to the feel of the meat as they cook. And then one thing to remember too is it's always good to let the meat rest as you pull it off, so that way it allows all those juices to get back into the meat and everything gets all tender again. So this one we're just gonna turn that right over. It's almost getting there. Again, we're just going for a nice little medium rare. We'll pull that off. Second, I'm gonna just turn this up just to get this backside cooked. And sometimes when you're, again, if you're using open fire, if the logs, in this case, they start to burn out a little bit too much, you can either add some more into there to kind of bring that fire back up. If you need more heat, you can easily move them around sometimes with just the tongs and things like that, just to get that fire kind of blazing a little bit. And then another thing too, if you want, you can always add a little bit of your compound butter directly on the grill just to get that, start that flavor process kind of going. And while we're waiting for that to go, I'll let Juan kind of get into what we're pairing this with today.
Yeah, somebody was asking a question actually.
Yeah,
oh,
the
go ahead,
Moody
sorry.
brothers want to know which mountain is Proprietary.
Proprietary is going to be right behind us to the left-hand side. So the family actually purchased a little bit of land back in 1979, if I'm not mistaken, and they had a little property there. And decided to move down to the valley floor in 1983, and that's actually when they purchased the first 28.5 acres here on the valley floor. Now we have 468. So some of the best pedigree Cabernet Sauvignon is growing here and in Oakville, and we're happy to have properties on both AVAs. So going off to what Cameron was saying, we are going to pair the ribeye with our proprietary red wine. So this one usually comes in club member shipments. We usually pour it upstairs in the tasting room when you come do a tasting with us. It'll be a blend between Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, and Malbec. Like I said before, it's gonna change year after year depending on how the year goes. Percentages are gonna be different, varietals are going to be different. I believe 2 years ago we had Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, Malbec, Merlot, and Cabernet Franc. So we had all the 5 noble grapes. This time we only have 3 of them, and it just has to do with how good the year was for those 3 different varietals. And yeah, you can pair with the ribeye. You can pretty approachable, drinkable wine. Not too tannic, not too acidic, not too bold. But we're gonna see how it does against this ribeye that Chef is cooking.
I'm looking forward to trying it. We're almost there, just letting it get a little bit more char on that ribeye just to finish up.
Can you repeat the fingertips again for people who missed it?
Yeah, so if your palm is open, you're touching that little part right there, so that's going to be the rare. And then as you go down your fingers, it's going to go medium rare, medium. At least I don't like my meat though. So we're gonna go ahead and pull this off. Again, so as the meat comes off, it's gonna continue to cook from that residual heat. We are going to add a little bit of our compound butter directly on top there. And that's gonna melt all over, give it the nice little herb flavors to tie in there with that Proprietary. And again, you want to let at least 5 minutes or so. The thicker the meat, you may need to give it a little bit longer of a time. And then from there, you can go ahead and start slicing. And then as you're slicing, that butter is going to drop into there as well too to add some more of that flavor onto the ribeye. So again, these are just a few of the little things I like to grill for myself at home. Some things we also cook here as well on property. Hopefully everybody has enjoyed this, and again, we can't wait for everybody to come back and join us soon so that we can have everyone here in person and be able to share it with you.
Yeah, so I think right now we're gonna open up for a question Q&A. So if we didn't get to your questions earlier, please type them into Instagram or Facebook, and then we'll try to get to them as much as we can. And if we can't get to them by the end of the video, then we'll get back on after it's over and get back to you with some answers.
Do we still have wine from Pritchard Hill?
We don't have wine from Proprietary. We only have wines from Rutherford, and also the Sea Garden is coming from our property in Oakville. So only Oakville and Rutherford.
I believe that's where we
Maddox
took our
says
tour
to
at.
bring home some leftovers.
Yeah, he will be. I have an 11-month-old son that's pretty much started to eat everything. So pretty soon we're going to be fighting over the ribeyes and lobster tails at home on who gets it.
He's pretty big, huh?
It's getting huge now. It's crazy. So crazy. They're growing too quick.
Yeah. Somebody's saying that we should have a kitchen out here, man.
That would be nice. I would love
Pretty
to
sweet,
have
huh?
a nice little kitchen out here. I love, for me, I mean, you got the breeze and everything, and seeing this, it kind of,
Views.
I would take being
breeze.
outdoors over stuck inside, but our kitchen inside's pretty nice too.
Yeah,
You
no,
can't-
it is.
How do you decide on the right cut to buy, and where do you like to buy your meat?
So right cut for me depends on what I'm cooking. If I'm gonna be grilling something, again, I prefer a ribeye, sometimes filet or tri-tips. For doing stew, obviously you don't need to use that higher of a quality of meat. You can use something like a chuck or something like that that's chopped up. Myself, we try to get meat as far as for here on property. We try to go to our local purveyors. I prefer to shop because I live out in Sonoma, so I shop at a market out there that has a pretty extensive meat and seafood counter.
You want to taste a little bit of this?
Yeah, try.
Yeah, try it.
This is our Proprietary. Cheers,
Proprietary,
sir.
cheers, buddy.
Happy Friday.
But yeah, we do have a full kitchen upstairs. So as I mentioned before, we have different food and wine pairings. We have the estate tasting, 3 different little bites with 3 different wines. We have the chef's, what is that?
Chef's pairing.
Chef's pairing. So
Yeah,
a little bit bigger.
Seasonal pairing, basically.
Yeah, seasonal, whatever's coming out of the gardens. We have the lunch experience Monday through Saturday, and that is a 4-course meal lunch, so about 2.5-hour experience, tour of the property, olive oil vinegar tasting, 4 different courses from the chef, paired with each one of our wines. And then on Sundays, we have the brunch, which is 6 different courses, tour of the property. You get to make your own salad dressing with our products. And a lot of food, a lot of wine, about 3 hours.
Come
3 to
hungry
4.
if you ever sign up for brunch. That's all I can say. So,
Yeah, don't have anything
you
beforehand.
definitely won't
Got
leave
Vinegar
starving.
says, I've never had the left bank that's coming in the May club shipment. Can you describe it? And I also see a 2014 is being offered.
So the left bank is actually done in reference to the West Bank and Bordeaux Friends. So it'll be a blend between Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, about 60-40. So that one is probably the most approachable wine that we have right at the gate. So that one you can just open the bottle up, let it sit for half an hour, pour yourself a glass, and you know, and it'll be fantastic. It's got a lot of like that's the one that I was describing earlier. A lot of dark chocolate, vanilla bean, a lot of rose petals, a lot of strawberry. So that one is actually a pretty great wine if you have people coming over and you don't know what level of wine knowledge they're at. So you can just pour it for your novice friends. You can pour it for your connoisseur friends. Everybody's gonna love it. It's a crowd pleaser wine.
Cam, Paula is asking what were the seasonings on the ribeye again before you grilled?
Before we grilled, it's just olive oil. In this case, we just used a little bit of our garlic just for the flavor, but you can use your standard olive oil and salt and pepper. So.
And then Erin is asking if you're from California. She says tri-tip is such a California cut.
I am from California, so yeah. born and raised in East Oakland. But yeah, I love tri-tip. I've probably cooked a couple of thousand tri-tips in my life. When I was 18 and had my first place, it was pretty much a tri-tip every week that I would cook. That was my go-to. So.
Jan remarked that the left bank is fantastic.
Yeah, so whoever asked about the 2014 left bank blend, there's a very small amount of that left. So if you want some of that, you better get your hands on it. I have club members emailing me left and right about that one. It's delicious.
And James says that the brunch is awesome. He's still dreaming about the eggs and the various different meats.
Are there any dessert wines offered?
So we have the late harvest Sauvignon Blanc, and then we also have the white port, which is we call it Angelica. So those are the only two that we have available. The Angelica was a 5-year non-vintage white port. We did fortify it with our own brandy. It was a Sauvignon Blanc wine that we sent out to a distillery in San Francisco. They turned the Sauvignon Blanc into brandy. They brought it back in, to the property, and we used that to fortify. So it's a pretty intense process, but still pretty unique. We can say that still everything was coming from the property.
Yeah, we typically do a dessert course with our dinners, and then with the brunch is what we do dessert course. So. Yeah.
And Cam Rowland is asking, how long do you take your meat out of the refrigerator and let it rest before it goes on the grill?
So you want it to kind of come up to room temp almost. If you're outside and it's burning hot, obviously you don't want it 100 degrees or so, but you just want it probably, I would say, I typically try to pull it about 30 minutes or so out beforehand. If it's a larger piece of meat, sometimes an hour before. You just don't want it frozen and cold inside the middle, because then as you're cooking it, the meat is going to cook unevenly inside.
Yeah. Andrea asks, what about the right bank? It's an exclusive for the club members.
Right, so the right bank is a very, very small case production. The person who I was doing the virtual tasting with just a little actually opening a bottle of right bank blend. And I asked her, are you sure you want to open that bottle? Before you open it, let me tell you a little bit more about it. It's a Cabernet Franc Merlot blend. Very, very small case production. I remember the first vintage we released, we only made about 40 cases. 2016 was a really phenomenal vintage, so we decided to give that a go. We bottled the wine. We started sharing with some of our club members, mainly upstairs, and we just sold out of it within the first month. So we decided to make a little bit more. I also found out that we planted a little more Cabernet Sauvignon, so the volume is going to get a little bit higher, not dramatically, but obviously it's going to become more popular. And it's just a fantastic bottle of wine. I can't get my hands on it anymore. I wish I had some bottles, but it is phenomenal.
The new one that went out to the wine club members,
2017.
I did a virtual tasting with that, and it's amazing.
It's beautiful, yeah.
Amazing. Randy Cobb asks, Cam, what sports did you play when you grew up?
So in school, I never actually really played sports, so probably I was 18 or so. Mainly basketball. I used to be a tiny guy before, and then kind of shot up in 11th grade. But yeah, basketball was kind of the go-to sport, but I've torn too many Achilles and knee surgeries and all that fun. So hopefully this year I get to join back on there. I get to join the, what I call it, older league.
yeah.
35 and over league. So I got to get back in running shape for that by December. So
basketball for me too, in case anybody was wondering.
Like center?
That's right, center.
Start around Ponting.
Yeah.
What's on next week's menu?
So next week is the Mother's Day brunch, I believe, that we are doing. So chef's going to be doing, I believe it's one or two of the staples that we kind of do here on our brunch. I believe it's going to be the egg. I don't want to throw out too many of the other things he's going to be doing, but it's going to be around the brunch subject for Mother's Day.
Any plans for a single varietal Cab Franc?
Yes. I think it's in the works. Again, we just have to figure out how the grapes are coming along, and that'll be up to the winemaker's decision. So hopefully, I would be super stoked, and it's looking like yeah. Mm-hmm.
Jan Wiley would like us to do a Zoom cooking class and tasting.
So I think that's something that they may be in the works of talking and trying to figure out logistically kind of how that works, but we would definitely keep that in mind. I know they're in the process of working on something like that right now. So
I think actually Josh is working on one as we speak.
Is he?
So we're just working out the kinks, and see how that goes. But we're constantly thinking of
Yeah, we're trying to adjust to the times like everybody else right now. So
yeah.
There's at least one birthday party currently scheduled.
that's what I
And
hear.
we might
Yeah.
have to add in a cooking element potentially.
Yeah, so as soon as we get that one done, we can, get back together, come up with better ideas on how, to work out the kinks, like I said, and hopefully we can make that happen too.
Juan, do you want to touch on the fact with the virtual tastings we can also do food pairings with the chef?
So yeah, so as of right now, what I've had been doing personally for my virtual tastings is I send them an email either from Cam or from Chef Jamie, and they usually ask me what wines are they tasting. I provided them with the list, and then they provide the guests with some ideas, some suggestions on food and wine pairings. Now we know that going to the stores might be a little bit difficult sometimes, so we give you a variety of suggestions. But yeah, they're always willing and welcome to help us out with that.
Yeah, we still have I believe a chef at Round Pond email available. So in case we were doing if you guys had any kind of pantry items or things like that, while you guys are at home, if you were looking for ideas to pair with the wine, you can send those into us, and then we'll be able to kind of give you some ideas or pointers as to what to cook up and what to pair with them.
Yep.
Do you have any 375s?
We have the Rutherford Cabernet Sauvignon in 375s, and then we might have some Sauvignon Blanc 375s. So just reach out to us to ask us about our inventory. And I love 375s. For some reason, I think they taste so good when I open them, and they're perfect for just a person. If you had a really great day that day or horrible day, and you just need that little extra juice to get you through it. You open yourself a 375, you don't feel committed to finishing the whole bottle. But you can also find a second person, and you're good to go.
Everybody loves friends to drink.
Cam,
That's right.
another question from Roland. He wants to know the difference between the prime and the choice meat. Is there one that tastes better?
Again, that's depending on where I would just leave that. Depending on where you buy that from, sometimes some places say it's prime and choice, knowing your purveyors and where they get the meat from. For me, it's honestly on the person that is cooking it as well too. Piece of meat, you can always probably take something that isn't. It may not be an A1 5 Wagyu kind of a steak, but you can still kind of tweak it, make it work. So it's kind of a loaded question.
Cool.
Questions? All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us.
We'll see you next
Please
week.
join us next week. Take care.